They laughed when I sat down. Not all of them, just enough to remind me I was still the outsider at this table. My name is Ava McKenna. I'm 32 years old. And tonight, I'm having dinner with the same people who once told me I'd never make it. My mother gave me that familiar glance, the kind that scans your outfit and silently judges every stitch. My brother barely looked up from the wine list. His fiancée smirked and murmured something about not everyone being used to dining somewhere this upscale. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. It's impossible to book reputation belong to me. I watched as they sipped their champagne, oblivious. The same people who once said I was wasting my life now sat beneath chandeliers I'd chosen, on chairs I'd personally approved, eating from plates I'd imported from Portugal. They had no idea what it took to get here, years of sleeping on couches, working 16-hour days, burning my hands in someone else's kitchen for scraps of experience. No idea how I built this place from dust and doubt. And certainly no idea that tonight they were sitting in the middle of my empire. Their conversation buzzed with condescension. This salad's too salty. The duck's undercooked. I hope the main course is actually filling. Every word was a jab. Every complaint a dismissal. But I just sat there nodding, letting them speak. Because the longer they talked, the deeper they'd sink. And when the moment came, when they finally realized where they were and who I'd become, it wouldn't be because I told them. It would be because they saw it, and couldn't unsee it. Charleston has always had a certain charm. The kind that smells like old money and magnolia trees. In my family, that charm came with rules. McKenna's didn't just exist, we performed. We graduated top of the class, wore the right navy blazers, joined the right golf clubs, dated people with double last names. There was a script and you followed it. I was born in a house with 5 bathrooms and no room for failure. My father, Judge William McKenna, built his career dismantling criminal cases with surgical precision. My mother, Dr. Elaine McKenna, chaired the law department at the local university and could quote constitutional amendments better than bedtime stories. My older brother, Nathan, a federal prosecutor by 28. His name was already floating around in conversations about a future Senate seat. And then there was me. I was the child who wrote poetry in the margins of textbooks. The girl who skipped mock trial to watch the kitchen staff flambe bananas in the back of a charity gala. I was 13 when I asked our housekeeper Lucia if I could shadow her in the kitchen instead of going to tennis camp. She thought I was joking until she saw the way I watched her hands as she chopped onions, slow and steady, like they were an extension of thought. No one noticed. At family dinners, I was background noise. While Nathan debated foreign policy with Dad, I was off in my own world, quietly tasting how lemon juice changed when mixed with butter versus oil. When I mentioned one day that I'd been experimenting with homemade pasta, my mother didn't even look up from her planner. She just said, "Ava, don't forget you have SAT prep this weekend." It wasn't that they were cruel. It was worse, they were indifferent. Every McKenna child had a lane. Nathan's was politics. Mine was undefined, which in our world meant unimportant. So, I cooked. By 16, I had memorized the flavor notes of at least 20 spices. I hosted secret dinners for my friends when my parents were out of town, setting up candlelit tables in the backyard and plating 4-course meals on mismatched china. We'd laugh, sip sparkling cider, and pretend we were somewhere else, somewhere I belonged. I applied to Duke like expected, political science like expected, honors track just like my brother. But I never stopped cooking. I would sneak into the student kitchen after midnight with grocery bags stuffed into my backpack. I'd bake loaves of sourdough at 2 a.m., using an old Dutch oven I found at a flea market. I'd trade slices of chocolate torte for notes from students in my macroeconomics class. I became known on campus not as that McKenna girl, but as the one who feeds you when you fail finals. I kept it hidden from my family. They thought I was focused on internships, policy, the McKenna plan. They didn't know I spent weekends working under a fake name at a bistro off King Street, just to learn how to plate scallops without them drying out. Everything I loved was something I had to keep secret, until one day I didn't. It happened during spring break of junior year. While most of my classmates flew to Cabo or Miami, I entered a local cooking competition hosted by Charleston's Culinary Institute. No cameras, no cash prizes, just 12 finalists, a pop-up kitchen, and a challenge to turn a box of mystery ingredients into something unforgettable. I still remember the basket: quail, sweet corn, fresh thyme, and dark chocolate. Most contestants played it safe: roasted, seared, reduced. I made a savory cocoa glaze, grilled the quail with a corn thyme puree, and served it on a bed of charred radicchio. I didn't win, but someone from the Post and Courier was there. They wrote a feature on young culinary minds to watch, and somehow I ended up in it, photo, full name, and all. That article changed everything. Within a week, I got a call from my mother. I just got an email from the dean. Care to explain why you're being recognized for cooking? She asked, each word coated with disbelief. I told her the truth. That night, they made me come home. We sat in the formal dining room, curtains drawn, chandelier blazing. The same room where we used to recite grace and college rankings in the same breath. But this time, the table felt colder than ever. You're jeopardizing the family name, my father said flatly, as if I'd been caught with drugs instead of duck confit. This isn't a career, my mother added. It's a hobby, and a poor one at that. I tried to explain that food was more than flavor, that it was language, memory, heritage, that Lucia had taught me more about discipline than any textbook ever did, that every time I cooked, I felt like I existed. Their silence was brutal. Then my father stood, walked to his study, and came back with a checkbook. If you walk away from Duke, from this family's path, we won't stop you. But you do it without our name, our support, or our money. He tore out a check for $5,000. This is your final withdrawal, he said. Make it last. I didn't cry. I just folded the check, placed it in my coat pocket, and stood up. Nathan, my brother, avoided my gaze. His fiancée, who I'd only met once, offered me a pitying glance, then quickly looked away. No one followed me to the door. No one asked if I had somewhere to sleep. I left that house with a duffel bag, a printed resume, and a folder of recipes I'd written by hand since I was 16. That night, I moved into a 3-bedroom apartment with 4 girls I met through a Craigslist ad. The walls were thin. The floor creaked. The kitchen smelled like burnt toast and expired garlic powder. But it was the first place I ever felt free. Free to burn onions without judgment. Free to wake up at 4 a.m. for a bakery prep shift. Free to start over. And from that moment on, I wasn't Ava McKenna, the disappointment. I was just Ava. Hungry, determined, and finally my own. My first job was at a bakery called Benny's Rise and Shine. The kind of place with peeling paint on the counters and a neon open sign that buzzed louder than it glowed. I wasn't even baking. I washed dishes, clocked in at 4:45 a.m., wore gloves 2 sizes too big, and stood for hours elbow-deep in suds that never quite hid the sting of lemon rinds and hot grease. It wasn't glamorous. No one clapped when I finished scrubbing 20 trays caked in sugar glaze. But every morning I watched the pastry chef measure by instinct, not scale. I studied her hands, how she kneaded without thinking, cut dough with purpose. I said little. I listened. I cleaned. By week 3, I asked if I could prep the butter croissants. She laughed. You're a McKenna, right? Shouldn't you be lawyering somewhere? I didn't correct her. I just said, can I fold the dough? Eventually she let me. And from there, I started picking up extra shifts, brunch shifts at a Greasy Spoon diner, nighttime runs as a line cook's assistant at a tapas place. I learned to work with burn blisters on my palms and permanent circles under my eyes. Sometimes I slept on a couch. Sometimes not at all. Most nights I questioned myself. He'd come in unannounced, rumored to be scouting for a sous chef for a new concept opening downtown. I didn't know who he was. I just knew he ordered octopus and no one else was willing to cook it. So I did. Pan-seared, fennel pollen, smoked paprika oil, garnished with preserved lemon rind I'd saved from a catering discard bin. He ate in silence, then walked straight into the kitchen. "Who plated this?" he asked, holding the dish. My manager pointed at me like I'd just broken a law. Chef Vito looked me up and down, apron soaked, hair pulled back with a rubber band. "You cook like someone who's been hungry for years," he said. I blinked. "I have been." He slid a card across the prep station. "Be at this address Monday morning. If you're late, don't come at all." That's how he trained us. Pressure first, precision second, pride dead last. But I stayed. Something in me, maybe stubbornness, maybe hunger, refused to leave. I learned the difference between heat and aggression, between plating and presentation, between talent and execution. Vito didn't compliment. Ever. But after 3 months, he stopped looking over my shoulder. That was his way of saying I belonged. And one night, as we closed down after a private tasting for some downtown investor types, he handed me a towel and said, "They liked your risotto. You're not terrible." Coming from him, it felt like a standing ovation. I spent 2 years under his brutal, brilliant mentorship. And when he finally left Charleston to open a place in Napa, he did something I never expected. He left me his knives. 6 months later I got a call. Henry Walsh, investor. Said he remembered my food. Said he had a property. Said he'd back me if I had a vision. I did. I called it Hearth and Steel, because cooking had always been two things to me: the warmth of memory and the fire of resistance. I sketched every inch of that space myself. Narrow kitchen for focus, open dining for connection, lighting low enough for intimacy but bright enough to honor every plate. We didn't hire based on resumes. I brought in people like me, the quiet ones, the overlooked ones, people who knew how to stay late and shut up and bleed into the food. And against every expectation it worked. We opened to strong reviews. Food and Wine called us Southern cuisine, redefined with unapologetic elegance. A month later, Bon Appetit named me one of the top 10 young chefs to watch. I was 30. My hands were full of burns. My bank account was thin. But because I didn't need them to clap for me anymore, I was finally cooking in a place that didn't demand permission to exist. And it was mine. The envelope was ivory, heavy stock, embossed with gold foil. It arrived on a Thursday morning, sandwiched between invoices and produce lists. I almost tossed it, assuming it was a vendor trying too hard to impress. Then I saw the name. Nathan and Madison, join us for an engagement dinner. My brother. At first, I thought it was a mistake, some twisted coincidence. But as I scanned the details, date, time, RSVP card, I froze. Madison, my future sister-in-law, had asked her event planner to book the most exclusive place in Charleston that still felt intimate. They wanted luxury, elegance, a restaurant that would wow guests and photograph well. They didn't realize they had chosen the one place I had bled for. For days I debated whether to accept. I didn't want drama. I didn't want performance. I didn't want to show up only to be humiliated again. But then I remembered the first night I peeled garlic until my hands blistered. The nights I slept on couches. The mornings I chopped onions in silence just to prove I belonged. This dinner wasn't about them. It was about me, finally showing up as who I truly was. So I RSVP'd. Yes. I wouldn't make a scene. I wouldn't wear a name tag. I'd simply sit down, calm, quiet, composed, and let them talk. Let them assume. Let them dismiss. Let them dine. The night arrived. I wore black, simple, elegant. No designer logos, no flashy heels. Just confidence. I entered through the staff hallway as always. Greeted my team. Checked the line. Briefed the servers. Then I walked out the front, like any other guest. The host greeted me. "Good evening, Ms." She paused. Her eyes flicked to mine in recognition. I nodded once. She smiled and played along. Your party is already seated. Right this way. And there they were. My family, arranged at the center table like royalty. My mother in pearls. Nathan in a navy suit. Madison in cream silk. Checking her reflection in the butter knife, I approached. Not one of them looked up. Not yet. They didn't even notice me at first. I approached the table like any other guest, measured steps, soft smile. My mother finally glanced up, doing her usual head-to-toe scan as if she could price my outfit just by looking. She gave me an air kiss that barely brushed my cheek. You're early, she said, surprised. I was already nearby. I replied. Nathan gave a polite nod. Madison flashed a tight-lipped smile. No one asked what nearby meant. They'd already ordered champagne, the second most expensive bottle on the list. Of course. Glad you could make it, Nathan said as I took my seat. We weren't sure you'd come. I wasn't either, I said. That earned me a glance but no further questions. The first course arrived. Grilled peaches with burrata and pistachio crumble. One of my signatures. The dish I designed to taste like late summer in Charleston. Madison poked at it. It's fine, she said. But is this portion size a joke? Nathan chuckled. It's called restraint, babe. My mother raised an eyebrow. Restraint? For this price, I expect full portions. I smiled and took a bite. My food. My kitchen. My vision. And they were picking it apart like they were doing the chef a favor. I could see my staff watching discreetly from across the floor. Jessica, my lead server, gave me the tiniest nod. Jose, the sommelier, avoided eye contact but kept a knowing smirk. No one said a word. And neither did I. Each course came and went. More complaints. More critiques. The fish is underseasoned. This pasta's too firm. Does the chef even taste their food? I stayed silent. Let them build their own illusion. Let them stack assumptions higher and higher until it all came crashing down. And then it did. The bill arrived. Our manager Liam placed the leather folder in the center of the table with quiet grace. Nathan reached for it, but Madison beat him to it. She opened it, blinked, frowned. There's a mistake, she said. It only lists wine. No food charges, Nathan added. They must have forgotten. Madison flagged down Liam. Excuse me. There's an error on our check. Liam glanced at me. I watched it land in slow motion, the truth settling over them like a weight. They had spent 2 hours insulting every dish, every detail in my restaurant. And I hadn't said a word. Because I didn't need to. No one spoke for a full 30 seconds. In restaurant time, that's an eternity. Finally, my mother reached for her water glass as if hydration could stabilize the moment. Nathan cleared his throat but didn't speak. Madison stared down at the check as though it might rewrite itself. I stood slowly. Thank you for coming, I said, calm and steady. I have a tasting to attend. Wait, my mother blurted, her voice tight. Ava, we didn't know. I know, I replied. That's why it worked. I nodded once to Liam, who whisked the bill away. Jose returned with a bottle of dessert wine, our best vintage, and poured quietly, saying nothing. He didn't have to. As I walked away, I felt their stares burning into my back. Not out of anger. Handed me a spoon with the new peach creme brulee she'd been testing. Taste. I did. Smooth. Balanced. Bright. Add time to the sugar crust, I said. Barely noticeable, but it'll echo the starter. She smiled. Already knew you'd say that. And just like that, we returned to the rhythm I loved. Heat. Noise. Precision. Peace. Later that week, something surprising happened. A text from Nathan. Can we talk? We met for coffee, neutral ground. He didn't apologize, not directly. But he asked questions. About the menu. About the staff. About how I started with nothing. I didn't know it was this hard, he admitted. What you've built. He trailed off. I nodded. I didn't build it to prove anything to you. I know, he said. But it proves something to me anyway. 2 days later, my mother called. She didn't open with guilt or excuses. Just, would you ever want to cook for us sometime? At home. I hesitated, then said, maybe. A week passed. And then, brunch. Not at a country club. Not at a hotel. At Alma's, a hole-in-the-wall brunch joint run by a friend from my early kitchen days. Mismatched chairs. Handwritten menus. Peach jam in chip jars. My parents sat stiffly at first. But by the second bite of sourdough and shakshuka, something softened. I didn't know eggs could taste like this, my father said quietly. I did, I replied. And for once he didn't argue. 2 weeks passed like steam through an open oven, quiet, fast, and warm. Life at Hearth and Steel continued with its usual cadence. Prep in the morning. Service at night. Staff briefings, vendor negotiations, menu testing, plating notes. I loved it all. But something had shifted. This time it wasn't the restaurant that changed. It was me. My phone buzzed with a message from Madison. Flores fell through. Can I pick your brain over coffee? Then one from Nathan. Can I bring the kids to see your kitchen? They should know success doesn't have just one path. Even my mother, the woman who once called my dream a hobby, began asking for recipes. Not the kind from magazines. The real ones, the ones I'd written in grease-stained notebooks over years of trial and error. She asked about my peach risotto. I told her I'd show her when she was ready to learn, not just taste. I started seeing my family not as villains, but as people raised inside the same narrow cage I escaped from. And that changed everything. Not overnight. Not perfectly. But honestly. One Saturday morning, the dining room transformed. Not for brunch service, but for the Flame program, a mentorship initiative I quietly launched for young culinary students from under-resourced backgrounds. I opened the space before hours. Let them shadow my chefs. Touch the tools. Hear the noise. Feel the fire. I saw pieces of myself in each of them. One girl, Taylor, reminded me of who I'd been at 19, quiet, unsure. Always looking for permission to belong. Now I gave it to her. Out loud. And that might have been the most important dish I'd ever served. That night, after the kitchen closed and the staff drifted out one by one, I sat at my usual corner table, notebook open, pen uncapped. The introduction for my cookbook still stared at me, blank, unforgiving. But this time the words came. Food has always been my language. When I wasn't allowed to speak, I seasoned. When I wasn't invited to shine, I seared. And when no one clapped, I played it anyway. Because the most meaningful success isn't served to you. You make it yourself, burnt hands, broken rules, and all. I set down my pen and exhaled. I wasn't the family failure. I wasn't the black sheep. I was a woman who built something real. Without their permission. Without their praise. And the most shocking part? I no longer need it either. If you've ever had to choose between being accepted and being true to yourself, just know you're not alone. I'd love to hear your story in the comments. What did you choose? And what did it cost you? If this story meant something to you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear. You don't need anyone's approval to be enough. You already are.